The galaxy had forgotten many things over the millennia, but the silence around one insignificant yellow star remained untouched, preserved like an ancient scar no empire dared to probe. Every navigational chart marked the Sol region in violent crimson, wrapped in layers of warnings written in languages so old that even the archivists struggled to translate them. Explorers whispered about it in hushed tones, always with unease, because even the oldest species, those with memories stretching back to the era of stellar colonization, refused to speak of the world at the center of that forbidden space. A primitive planet, unspectacular, chemically unremarkable, sitting in the calm of its orbit. Yet it was surrounded by an isolation perimeter woven through spatial fabric itself. No one alive could explain why. The newest generation of starfarers viewed it with a blend of confusion and bold curiosity. They were raised in an age where ancient superstitions were mocked and outlawed, where exploration was a virtue and forbidden knowledge a challenge. A world locked away for thousands of years fascinated them. They questioned the logic of letting fear guide policy long after the civilizations that created those warnings faded into dust. To them, Earth was simply a mystery that begged to be solved, a relic of old galactic paranoia. Their questions, however, were met with trembling silence by older species who still remembered what prompted the isolation in the first place. Even automated probes avoided the region. Some claimed they were redirected by unknown forces. Others disappeared entirely, their signal traces evaporating as though swallowed by a star that wasn't there. No wreckage. No ping. No final telemetry. Just a void. This made Sol the only star system in known space where technology behaved wrong, where physical laws twisted around a perimeter designed not as a border, but a warning. Ancient logs hinted at past attempts to breach the region. Every record ended abruptly: corrupted files, fragmented audio, incomplete reports. The few recovered fragments carried only panic, short bursts, desperate voices, abrupt silences. Scholars debated endlessly whether these were genuine or dramatizations from forgotten eras. Yet none dared risk an expedition to verify the truth. The fear was older than rational thought, older than the empires currently ruling the galactic core. It was known simply as the Red Silence. Still, curiosity persisted. Why would a primitive world be quarantined when even dangerous war species weren't? What possible threat could emerge from an isolated planet whose inhabitants should have been barely climbing out of their atmosphere millennia ago? No star system scale weapons originated there. No supermassive anomalies. No sign of civilization advancing to the point of interstellar travel. It was as if the entire galaxy agreed to lock a door without remembering what lid behind it. Rumors spread across trading ports. Sol wasn't isolated because of what it had become, but because of what once lived there. Stories claimed humans had been part of early galactic society, rising quickly, too quickly, before disappearing without explanation. Some claimed the species had self-destructed, others that they had vanished into some higher plane. A few whispered they had been forced into isolation by the united might of the galaxy. The conflicting tales made the truth impossible to discern, fueling the fire of curiosity even more. The growing coalition of scientific guilds decided it was time to challenge the superstition. Fear had no place in a galaxy built upon knowledge and discovery. They assembled a council of researchers, historians, and engineers, choosing those with no ancestral memory of the old terror. Their minds were untouched by stories passed down from generation to generation, free from the emotional weight that had deterred their predecessors. They argued that if the galaxy had locked this world away, then understanding the reason was critical. Knowledge suppressed for too long caused more harm than truth. The coalition's early findings only deepened the mystery. Energy readings near the perimeter were distorted, as though the system was wrapped in an ancient shield of unknown architecture. Temporal drift signatures suggested the region itself resisted observation. The data showed that Sol was not defended by an external force, it was sealed from within. Something or someone inside had designed the barrier. Their curiosity hardening into determination, the coalition concluded that ignorance posed a greater threat than whatever the old civilizations feared. If humanity had once existed there, their disappearance might hold warnings vital to understanding the balance of power in the modern era. If Earth had once contributed to galactic affairs, it could hold lost technology. If it had harbored dangers, those dangers might still be evolving. And so they prepared to break the silence. Diplomats sought approval from governing councils, explorers readied vessels, and scholars armed themselves with fragmented archives. The galaxy watched nervously, unsure whether to cheer the pursuit of knowledge or tremble at the possibility of awakening something long dormant. Every species that carried old bloodlines secretly hoped the coalition would fail to unlock the truth. But the younger races pushed forward with relentless enthusiasm. The expedition formed not out of bravery, but out of the belief that mysteries should not control the future. Whether the galaxy liked it or not, the silence around Earth was about to be challenged for the first time in thousands of years. The moment the first vessel aligned its course toward the forbidden star, an unspoken tension rippled through the civilizations. Something ancient stirred beneath layers of forgotten history, as if waiting for someone foolish, or bold enough, to return. And in the distance, the quarantined world remained silent, patient, and unreadable, as though knowing they were coming. The expedition fleet approached the perimeter with a mixture of confidence and unease, their hulls reflecting distorted starlight as they drifted into the region where every probe before them had vanished. The moment they crossed the boundary, instruments flickered, stabilizers hummed under strange stress, and sensors displayed readings that defied calibration. It wasn't an attack, nothing struck them, yet the ships behaved as if the space around them rejected their presence. Engineers scrambled to adjust power flow, compensating for anomalies that shouldn't have existed. Quantum fields bent unnaturally, light lagged by imperceptible fractions, and gravity registered subtle fluctuations. Whatever built this perimeter had done so with precision far beyond contemporary technology. The fleet pressed onward, determined to decipher the phenomena rather than retreat. The first clear view of the solar system left them stunned. Instead of a desolate region ravaged by time, everything appeared unnervingly pristine. Planetary orbits were impossibly stable. Radiation belts looked shaped rather than natural. Asteroid fields aligned into patterns too intentional to dismiss as coincidence. Nothing indicated neglect. Instead, it resembled a system maintained without visible custodians. Records spoke of Sol as a primitive zone, yet the coordination of celestial bodies suggested intervention. Mars became their initial target. Scans revealed melted structures buried beneath dunes, their geometry unfamiliar. The team detected traces of weapon signatures with energy profiles that had no match in any archive. These ruins weren't millennia old, they were older. Geological dating placed the destruction at least 10,000 years before the perimeter's creation, implying humanity had reached Mars long before officially recorded timelines. This contradicted every accepted piece of galactic history. Farther from the Martian surface, drifting artifacts caught their attention. Small probes, ancient, angular, and encased in alloys the fleet couldn't identify, still floated silently. Their power cores emitted stable readings despite their age. Attempts to decode the data streams failed. Every encryption layer adapted whenever a decryption algorithm came close, almost as if defending itself. The more the expedition analyzed, the clearer it became that these machines were far beyond the technology level the galaxy expected from early humans. When the fleet finally reached Earth's orbit, bewilderment grew into disbelief. There were no signs of active civilization. No cities, no communication networks, no space traffic. Yet the planet pulsed with concentrated energy signatures buried deep beneath the crust, patterns too deliberate to be natural. They detected dormant systems nested inside the mantle, each one enormous enough to reshape continents if activated. This planet wasn't empty. It was sleeping. The discovery of an invisible lattice surrounding Earth pushed their uncertainty into alarm. It wasn't a shield in the traditional sense, it was a dimensional lock, synchronized energetically with the perimeter but controlled internally. Every algorithm pointed to the same conclusion: the lock had been activated from the planet itself. The galaxy didn't trap Earth. Earth sealed itself. The breakthrough came when a ship uncovered an orbital relay hidden within the debris ring. Its architecture didn't match the ancient Martian ruins or the drifting probes. This was more advanced. Its surface refracted scans, its internal lattice showed independent decision-making capabilities, and its memory core held fragments of a log. Not a message, not a warning, just a timestamp. The moment the isolation activated, a unified human command, routed through the system, initiated the seal. The implications hit the fleet hard. The galaxy hadn't isolated a threat. Humanity had withdrawn deliberately, shutting everyone out. The old stories portraying humans as victims or targets suddenly felt hollow. Something had driven them to vanish voluntarily. Something powerful enough that they chose seclusion over dominance. The deeper the fleet ventured, the more inconsistencies surfaced. Every clue pointed toward a civilization far more advanced than the one described in suppressed archives. Yet Earth appeared abandoned. The ecosystem thrived untouched, technology hidden rather than decayed, and infrastructure buried rather than destroyed. These were deliberate choices, not the remnants of collapse. The question that haunted every mind was simple: where did the humans go? Before the fleet could form a unified theory, their instruments detected a pulse. Not aggression, activation. A dormant signal buried beneath Earth's crust briefly awakened, and a silent wave rippled outward. Systems across the fleet shuddered. Navigation screens flashed with coordinates, ancient and incomprehensible. The activation wasn't directed at them, it was directed at the stars. The fleet had crossed a line. Something had been triggered. Humanity hadn't been passive. They had been waiting. The pulse that rippled from Earth forced the expedition to dig into the restricted corners of the Galactic archive, hoping to match the signal pattern. Most of the files were locked behind ancient encryption protocols, ones no current civilization claimed ownership of. After hours of deconstruction, a sliver of data emerged, an old identifier tied to the first contact era. It referenced a species classified as an anomaly, a race that rose from a death world and accelerated through technological stages at a pace that unsettled every observing empire. The species' name matched the forgotten red zone world, humanity. The deeper they searched, the more disturbing the revelations became. Early reports depicted humans as unusually adaptive. Where other species spent centuries learning to function off-world, humans adapted within weeks. Where others struggled with alien technology, humans dissected, reverse-engineered, and repurposed it with uncanny speed. Their creativity wasn't merely innovation, it bordered on instinct. Every archived assessment highlighted the same point: humans didn't follow technological progression, they leapt through it. A recovered transcript detailed a conflict between a mid-tier empire and the fledgling human civilization. Humanity had only just begun using faster-than-light travel, yet they managed to hold their ground against a force with millennia of experience. The battle summaries emphasized the same chilling observation: human strategy evolved mid-engagement. Every setback improved them. Every defeat strengthened them. By the end of the conflict, they were producing equipment that rivaled the enemy's finest. No other species in recorded history demonstrated that kind of rapid escalation. The galaxy responded not with extermination, but with fear-driven diplomacy. Early humans negotiated with dozens of civilizations yet refused to integrate fully into the broader galactic structure. They remained unpredictable, fiercely independent, and driven by an internal momentum no one understood. The final archived meeting between the human delegation and the United Council ended in vague statements about necessary restraint and events approaching beyond biological limits. Then the record simply stopped. The expedition uncovered a hidden section of the archive tied to an extinct historian caste. These texts described the moment the galaxy realized humans were surpassing natural evolutionary boundaries. Their biological resilience grew unnervingly quickly. Their neural adaptability spiked after interacting with alien databases and quantum systems. It wasn't unnatural, it was simply unbounded. Humans weren't following the evolutionary constraints every other species obeyed. They were breaking them. The text theorized that humanity was not just evolving, they were converging towards something the galaxy couldn't predict. The historian's final note proposed a terrifying suggestion: humans might eventually reach a point where their understanding of physics, biology, and space-time surpassed the combined knowledge of the galaxy. That speculation alone justified the Council's fear, but the expedition soon realized the truth ran deeper. A buried segment of the last human transmissions contained a stark message. They had detected an existential threat in their own projection models. Not an external enemy, not a rival empire, something emerging from within their trajectory of development. A self-born catastrophe. The expedition now understood the ancient fear. Humans didn't vanish because the galaxy forced them into isolation. They chose to retreat to prevent their unchecked growth from reshaping existence itself. The perimeter around Sol wasn't protection from outsiders. It was protection from humanity's own acceleration. Yet the eclipse in the historical timeline didn't explain what happened next. After sealing themselves in, humanity disappeared from every sensor, archive, and record. There were no signs of struggle, no traces of decay. They simply removed themselves from the cosmic stage. Empires rose and fell, but Earth remained locked behind its silent barrier. The expedition compared the timeline of the isolation with the emergence of the Martian ruins and ancient probes. The dates didn't align with any downfall. Humanity had been advancing even as the barrier formed. They weren't fleeing. They were preparing. The activation signal they witnessed confirmed it. The dormant systems weren't relics. They were waiting for a specific trigger. The logs hinted that humanity planned to reemerge when the galaxy reached a certain threshold of stability, or when an external interaction breached the isolation. The fleet realized the truth with chilling clarity. The expedition hadn't just uncovered history. They had awakened the final stage of humanity's long-buried plan. The signal that burst outward wasn't a distress call. It was an awakening sequence. Humanity's isolation had served its purpose, and the trigger had been pulled. The galaxy's old fear wasn't based on myth. It was based on foresight. Humanity had not vanished. They were returning. The moment the activation pulse spread across the fleet, every ship's systems displayed a single message in an unrecognized script that translated itself instantly. Sequence acknowledged. No one understood how their interfaces changed without direct access. Engineers attempted to isolate the intrusion, but the more they tried, the more evident it became that their systems weren't being attacked. They were being synchronized. Something within the solar system had linked itself to their vessels with precision that bypassed every known firewall. Then, just as suddenly, the interference stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than the void around them. Across light years, reaction came swiftly. Long-dormant listening posts in forgotten corners of the galaxy activated for the first time since early civilization. Automated distress codices triggered themselves in ancient capitals, sending warnings through subspace networks that no one alive understood. Empires that had become complacent in peace abruptly shifted to emergency stances. Old leaders who had dismissed humanity as myth felt the weight of ancestral terror return. Entire governments convened emergency councils without even waiting to confirm the source of the activation. They didn't need to. Every old species recognized the signature instantly. Children born millennia after humanity's disappearance watched their skies fill with hastily deployed defensive satellites. Militaries mobilized fleets towards centralized holds, not in preparation for war, but in fear of being chosen as the point of first contact. The panic wasn't spoken openly. It was held in restrained breaths, in trembling diplomats, in hurried transmissions that carried more dread than information. One phrase repeated across star systems. The humans have awakened. The expedition fleet detected a surge from the lunar megastructure they had only begun to analyze. The internal structure shifted, unlocking layers previously invisible to scans. The device expanded, revealing its true function. Not a relay, but a command node. Energy poured from deep beneath the lunar crust, feeding the node and stabilizing the signal that continued to ripple outward. The expedition realized too late that by entering the perimeter, they had supplied the final variable the system had been waiting for. Their presence authenticated the reactivation sequence. Earth itself responded next. Seismic vibrations rolled across continents without causing destruction, as if something beneath the surface stretched after a long slumber. Energy signatures rose from planetary depths in patterns that aligned perfectly with the dimensional lock surrounding the world. The barrier did not collapse, It shifted, altering its structure. It was no longer a quarantine. It was an open channel. The fleet's captain scrambled to interpret the readings, but nothing matched known science. Energy densities rivaled stellar cores. Subsurface structures aligned into geometric formations miles wide. Everything pointed toward an intelligence reasserting control. The expedition realized they were not observing remnants. They were witnessing the beginning of a system-wide reactivation. The galaxy responded with a mixture of desperation and fatalism. Some empires prepared evacuation protocols for remote colonies. Others began transmitting pre-written messages of submission drafted by ancestors who understood humanity's trajectory better than their descendants ever could. Even the most powerful civilizations paused their internal disputes, aware that unity offered the only chance of negotiating with whatever emerged from Earth. The expedition received unexpected transmissions from these civilizations, warnings, pleas, and orders to retreat immediately. But retreat was impossible now. The perimeter prevented exit, and the dimensional lock had shifted into a containment cocoon, ensuring the fleet remained present for what came next. It wasn't hostile. It was deliberate. The system wanted witnesses. As the lunar command node stabilized, it emitted a concentrated burst of light. The beam arced silently toward Earth, connecting with one of the subsurface structures detected earlier. The moment they linked, the entire planet brightened with lattice-like energy veins stretching across continents and oceans. These signatures pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat returning to life. The expedition understood the terrifying implication. The activation sequence wasn't just awakening dormant machinery. It was signaling the return of an entire species whose evolution had outpaced the galaxy's comprehension. This wasn't the beginning of a conflict. It was the announcement of presence. The silence that once protected Earth had been lifted, and something on the planet responded as if recognizing the final key in a lock that had held for millennia. Humanity had not been forgotten. They had been preparing to step back into a galaxy that had no idea how to face them. The planet's lattice of glowing lines intensified until Earth resembled a living star wrapped in an engineered pulse. The expedition watched in stunned silence as the energy patterns synchronized, forming a global grid that seemed to resonate with a rhythm older than any civilization present. Their ships detected no threat signatures, yet every instinct told them they were witnessing power far beyond weaponry. This was controlled evolution on a planetary scale. The question of where humanity had gone was answered by the inevitable realization: they had never truly left. They had changed. A point above Earth brightened as space folded open without any distortion detectable by the fleet's sensors. No warp, no slipstream, no wormhole, just absence replaced by presence. A vessel emerged, sleek and silent, constructed of material the ships couldn't identify. It absorbed light rather than reflected it, wrapped in a sheen that suggested mastery over physics. The vessel bore no markings, no engines, and no conventional structure. Yet it radiated authority. More appeared behind it, each arrival instantaneous and seamless, forming a formation that felt ceremonial rather than strategic. The expedition braced for confrontation, but the fleet of unknown craft remained motionless, as if giving the observers time to comprehend what had arrived. No empire in the galaxy possessed the capability to materialize ships without measurable energy signatures. These weren't the creations of a returning species. They were the creations of a civilization that had ascended far beyond traditional technological hierarchy. A transmission reached every ship, bypassing comms entirely. It spoke in a voice shaped by perfect clarity, neither mechanical nor fully organic. It carried the cadence of something that had watched centuries pass like drifting dust. The message wasn't a threat, not a declaration, but a confirmation. Human presence acknowledged. The words didn't demand response. They simply announced a fact that could no longer be denied. The fleet tried to hail them, but no reply came. Instead, one ship from the human formation descended toward the lunar command node. It approached with graceful precision, merging its energy signature with the node's activation field. The node responded instantly, amplifying the lattice on Earth. The expedition realized the humans were recalibrating the planetary system, not awakening it blindly. This was control born from a civilization that hadn't been dormant. They had been refining themselves in seclusion, reaching an understanding of reality the galaxy had struggled even to conceptualize. Earth's atmosphere shifted, illuminated by vertical columns of light that emerged across continents. They weren't weapons. They were gateways. Human figures stepped through them, tall, composed, and carrying no visible equipment. Their appearance retained familiar traits but enhanced, as though evolution had been guided with purpose. Their movements possessed an ease suggesting complete harmony with their surroundings. They did not look like conquerors, but like beings who carried certainty instead of arrogance. One of them appeared on the command node's surface, gazing calmly at the fleet above. A projection emerged beside him, linking directly to the expedition ships. The human spoke with composed authority. They thanked the fleet for unlocking the final sequence, explaining that the isolation was a calculated measure to prevent a predicted paradox tied to their accelerated development. Humanity had seen their trajectory and recognized that intervention in galactic affairs during their transition would destabilize reality itself. The barrier was never meant as exile, but as containment until their evolution stabilized. They explained that their reemergence wasn't driven by dominance. It was necessity. The galaxy had reached a point where certain events, ones not yet visible, required interaction only humanity could provide. Their isolation had preserved both themselves and the civilizations beyond Sol. Now that the metamorphosis had concluded, the barrier was obsolete. The fleet felt a mixture of awe and dread. These weren't the humans described in myths. They were something far beyond, a species that had outgrown limitations and shaped themselves into a force the galaxy had feared yet desperately needed. Their presence alone shifted the balance of existence. The final statement carried no menace, only truth delivered without embellishment. We tried to sleep. You opened the door. Now we return to our place in the galaxy. There was no threat, no demand. Just certainty. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again.